and I'm not bothered with wage theft, and I'm not bothered with abusive employers, but I'm willing to stand up for people who are. And so I'll come and I'll stand up, and I think that's what we have to do. It's not the farm to stand up for the farmer. And we don't have to be a wage earner to stand up for against wage theft.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much. Our last set of panelists will be Anuradha Mittal, who's the Executive Director of the Oakland Institute, an independent policy think tank bringing fresh ideas and bold action to the most pressing social, economic, and environmental issues of our time. And I know the first time that I heard Anuradha speak, she was exposing the land grab perpetrated by Bruce Rastetter. Also on this panel will be George Naylor, who has raised non-GMO corn and soybeans on his family's farm in Greene County, Iowa since 1976. He's a board member of the Center for Food Safety, a past president of the National Family Farm Coalition, and has been involved in farm activism for nearly 40 years. And our third panelist is Patty Olvera, who's the Assistant Director of Food and Water Watch, a national advocacy organization that works for healthy food and clean water for all. And before that, she was the Deputy Director of the Energy and Environment Program at Public Citizen and a researcher at the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice.
Thank you all. I was just so excited that this was happening, that Rastetter had provided this opportunity. Because I got to see all these beautiful, wonderful people that I have now known since 2011. My name is Anuradha. I'm with the Oakland Institute. As it was mentioned, when we first put out the research that what AgriSol, where the CEO was Rastetter, what he was planning to do in Tanzania, which would have displaced over 160,000 smallholder farmers. We had no idea what would come of it. We knew it was wrong. We knew it was a very evil, wrong thing to do. But a little think tank in Oakland, California put it out, we had no idea. And look what you made possible. Thank you. And not just that, you just didn't stop his bad plans. As I mentioned yesterday, these people were refugees who had come from Burundi 40 years or more than 40 years ago, had been farming the land, had been producing food that is consumed in that area in Tanzania. They were told they would have citizenship papers if they broke down their own homes and leave. Last November, they're still on that land and they got the citizenship papers. Thanks to you. It was interesting when today it was reported that Rastetter is really concerned about the world. How are we going to feed the world? Oh my God, we're going to tell us, how are we going to feed the world? You know what that is? We call it poor washing. You know, like greenwashing? Poor washing. Nobody asked him, nobody gave him the mandate to worry about feeding the world, but he took on that responsibility. Now that idiot will not tell you what I will tell you. Even today, we have more than 2,500 kilocalories per person around the world. 2,500 kilocalories per person around the world. Enough to make each one of us chubby. If it had to do with producing food, you know, I come from the beautiful country, India. We are net food exporter, and yet we are home to more than half of the world's hungry population. I now live in California, where Fresno and Tulare are the most food productive areas, but they have the highest rate of hunger among the farm workers. Do you know 75% of the world's poor? Who are they? People who are considered poor, who live below the poverty line.
Rural and farmers.
These are the family farmers around the world. Family farmers who produce 80% of the food that is consumed in the developing world. our farmers are starving. In my own country, in a decade, more than 100,000 farmers have taken their own lives. Almost every day farmers take their own lives because they've been told to buy GMO seeds, and you buy their Roundup, then you buy other things, and then there is no market.
Hey, right.
Let's look at the United States. Do you know the 49% of the poorest counties are rural counties? Now, if we had a different vision, which is one of linked prosperity, a vision which is based on shared prosperity, that the people who grow the food that we need to survive, if we could acknowledge and recognize them for the contribution they make, if we could recognize the multifunctionality of agriculture. You know, small farmers are not just producing food for the world, they're the stewards of biodiversity. They are the ones who keep our rural economies working. So agriculture is not just a commodity to be exported thanks to World Trade agreements. It is actually about food and communities and sustenance. Do we know that the small farmers are 1,000 times more productive? This is another of the lies that is not, that they keep saying that the large farms will feed the world. Small farms are 1,000 times more productive, and this is not just made a figure, even the Food and Agriculture Organization would recognize. They say we need large farms so we create jobs. Even the FAO acknowledges, if you look in Africa, 5 acres of arable land is enough to sustain a family. On average, that would be at least 5 family members. So when Rasteda likes, when they go and they take 100,000 hectares of land and they give menial jobs to plantation workers, maximum 1,000 people, 100,000 hectares could actually sustain 100,000 people. At least 20,000 families, do the maths. So only an idiot who's sitting with other idiots at an ag summit will tell us that they will feed the world, they'll create jobs, they'll protect the environment. All they have is lies and buzzwords. They have no facts and they have no truth. So, what is a vision? It's actually pretty simple. When it comes to land, who does it belong to? Those who work the land. Seeds, who do they belong to? Those who work with the seeds, the farmers. Water, who does it belong to?
All of us.
There is no maths, no formula needed. We know how to feed the world. We know how to shelter the world. We know how to clothe the world. Do you know what we have to figure out? Our vision has to be about figuring out how to remove those from power who prevent that from happening.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you. That's an honor to be here. And I'd like to say I grew up on the family farm that my grandparents bought in 1919, and they've been farming in Greene County since before 1900. My grandparents became farmers when the coal mine in Greene County caved in on his tools one night. So, and ever since, I think my whole family on both sides of the family always appreciated being family farmers and recognized the family farm as a refuge because they all couldn't stay on the farm. But it's a very important resource, and I think we should look back at history in the South. A lot of white farmers, big white farmers, actually helped fund much of the civil rights movement in the South. So I think we should be careful about how we talk about big farmers and little farmers. I mean, ideally, we want medium and small farmers. We want them to have a crop rotation that protects the soil. And that's not going to happen under this system because everybody just thinks about growing the most of everything. And I'm going to touch on that later. First I'll say that Frank, the famous Indian chief Joseph, agreed with you. He said it does not require many words to speak the truth. So, and one of the great farmers that I know, Ben Burkett, is president of the National Family Farm Coalition now, and believe me, he's a black farmer from Mississippi. You can believe how he appreciates the fact that his ancestors were able to get a farm and hold on to it all this many years. So somebody recently said to me, yeah, I'm tired of speaking to the choir. Well, I reminded them that the choir is getting a hell of a lot bigger, a lot smarter.
That's right.
And we're all singing in harmony.
That's right.
A lot of the groups here and all of you Iowa CCI members can take credit for that. And so I want to talk about politics a little bit, Democrats and Republicans, and I happened to just a few years ago become an independent because I can no longer stand identifying myself as a Democrat. But so when you think about it, on the Republican side of the ledger, look over there. We have one person that wants to run for president, whose father was the head of what a lot of people around the world recognize as the what was I going to say? The secret police in their country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, who funds the Republican Party today? Well, we all recognize the Koch brothers. Okay. Well, the Republican Party, at one time, the President of the United States, Eisenhower, he in his closing address, he warned us. He says we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. Well, we know now that the Republican Party is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the military-industrial agribusiness complex. And besides that, you know who the father of the Koch brothers was? His name was Fred Koch. He started the John Birch Society, and he accused our President Eisenhower of being a communist. So you can see where the Republican Party is today. So I can guarantee I'm not going to be a Republican. But we got to be thinking about who the Democrats are going to pick this time. I've stood on the steps of the U.S. Capitol with the Speaker of the House and the Secretary of Agriculture, both Democrats, and you would have thought I was talking to the President of the Farm Bureau. They would say, well, that's just how the market works. Yeah, and I said, yeah, I know that's how the market works. You just let the chips fall where they may. And we all know the chips go in one direction. So that's what we're all about, is making sure the chips don't fall in one direction. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we need to think, because what we're talking about is revolutionary change, like Mark was talking about, real structural change. We're talking about a world that's going to be different after we get that change. We're going to be talking about how farmers will have a rotation on their farm so that they can have a permanent pasture and hay that keeps the nitrogen in the land and not going down the river. So we have to be thinking straight on this. We have to help our fellow citizens think straight on this. Okay, now when you drove down the road and you need gas and you see two gas stations, which one will you pick? The one that's has a higher price or the lower price?
Lower price.
The lower price, okay? If you go in the grocery store and you see two items that are virtually the same, are you going to pick the high price one or the low price one?
Yeah,
The low price one. Okay. So therefore, agribusiness uses an Arab logic to recruit us all in their cause by saying, well, what do consumers want? They want things cheap. Okay? And it's whether it's food or whether it's energy, we want things cheap. Well, and they are going to give it to us, but the thing they don't tell us, that if we always want things cheap, and the system works for cheap food, cheap energy, cheap crap that's produced all around the world with cheap labor, we end up living in a world that, with the environment destroyed and our fellow citizens impoverished, including ourselves. So a system that's sustainable isn't going to be based on the idea that we want everything cheap. I mean, just think of what big corporations do to deliver cheap energy. Just think what we're doing now in the name of delivering cheap food. And so There was a time when we had a farm program that was based on that. They knew that if farmers were allowed to do just whatever they would do naturally, which is to produce more, they would end up hurting their land, and that was very evident in the Great Depression in the Dust Bowl. And so what was developed under the New Deal, because farmers had been demanding it ever since the 1920s, and that was a parity farm program. So let me help you think about what a parity farm program would do, rather than a farmer thinking, man, I gotta produce every bushel I can, no matter how, because I don't know what the price is gonna be next year. And I gotta get some money saved up for the coming crash. And besides, I got mortgages to pay for. Instead of that, what you do is, we say, here's a piece of land. This land can produce so much corn, so much beans, whatever, crops that lay the land open to erosion. And that farmer is told that, okay, you can produce that much and you can market that much. Now, excuse me, I'm really getting dry. I've already watered. Who did that in the campaign? I forget. Oh, Rubio, yeah. Yeah.
You'll see that
Now,
on Facebook.
like I said, it's going to be a different world. So think of the logic of the farmer if he's told, okay, on your farm you can sell 10,000 bushels of corn. Okay, is he, instead of trying to produce as many bushels as he can, using every amount of fertilizer and chemical that he can, trying to kill every pest and every weed, he's going to go, wait, I'm going to try to raise 10,000 bushels of corn with the least amount of chemicals, with the least amount of fertilizer, and the most amount of conservation and biodiversity. You see? So the system, the way we work today, we always are thinking in the same way that they want us to think, that it makes sense that we want things cheaper. But it doesn't make sense for all of us. That's a error of logic. And so we could then have, we wouldn't need to produce so much corn, we wouldn't need to produce so many soybeans, and what would happen is the livestock then would not be being fed in great big CAFOs. Because as one economist back in the 80s said, when the price of corn was so cheap, he says, well, if you're going to raise livestock, don't bother to raise the feed, just buy it off the market. So of course, it's been easier for the big CAFO companies to get on the phone and tell their broker, I want, 20 million bushels of corn for next month or whatever. They don't have to worry about the soil erosion, they don't have to worry about the pollution, they don't have to worry about the social consequences in our rural communities. They just bought stuff cheap and pocketed all the profits. So that's what we're stuck with. Okay, so I hope you understand now what the logic is that we have to think about, and why we need a parity program. I'm going to ask Brad Wilson here to offer a few ideas. He's a number cruncher, and he's got charts to show exactly what has happened number-wise over the last 30, 40, 50 years when we haven't had parity. And so I'll let you talk for a
Would
bit.
you hold that microphone?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And again, George asked me to just show some pictures to tell the story that he's telling. And that's one thing I specialize in simple pictures to show people what they haven't seen before about some of these issues. Just as an introduction though, very briefly, people asked about the movement a little bit earlier. We have a miracle. After 50 years of waiting and struggling in the farm movement, because there wasn't a food movement of any significance, we have a miracle. We have this huge food movement, and you know what? They're against cheap corn. Therefore, us being paid more and them spending more. That's a miracle, okay? So it's wonderful to see how many ways we're united, but just a little bit higher here, huh?
Okay.
Poor Lord.
So anyway, one of the things I want to point out is that what the pictures show is something that, what a wonderful group to have together. What the Rasteros of the world, what the Capos and the Cargills and so forth have done, is they've created a farm bill that is divided in Congress in many ways. In this room, many of us are divided. Now, what a terrible thing to have to be in conflict with each other. So, what the pictures show, right here. So, I'm going to put some of this on your table. But anyway, if you think of a pie chart of the farm bill, okay, spending, and people think that's what a farm bill is. And what is a farm bill? People think that's what a farm bill is. When they had Farm Aid Congress, the farmers told people what the issues were, and it wasn't like that. So there's another pie chart. I'll put this on your table. There's another pie chart, and that is the hidden farm bill, what I call the hidden farm bill. So the issue of this unknown part of the farm bill is the biggest issue, the most destructive issue, the least known issue, and the most destructive to our movement. And I'd like you just to say that with me one time, okay? The biggest issue, the most destructive issue, the least known issue, and the issue that's most destructive to our movement. So just the simplest thing to say is to point out about subsidies. You can see a picture of subsidies, and that's what I'm going to put on your table. And the thing is, you see it on a big chart like that, as though it's the farmers that are the problem, because that's in the spending pie. But there's that, there's the fact that the price floors have gone down. The price floors have gone down. I've got a picture of price floors. Okay?
It hit the floor.
I'll put that back in. But anyway, so there's one that shows that, how the price, and then how the price went down, and then the part that agribusiness gets. That's what the pictures are. And then just the other thing is the combination picture, which is this one that you'll see. This is a special one that shows also the Rastetter part that he gets 8 times bigger, and the Cargill part than what the farmers get.
What's down here is the amount of what agribusiness has absorbed because we didn't get parity prices. This up here is the amount that taxpayers paid to make up for it, that just kept the farm economy running and let attrition take over so that we ended up with bigger and bigger farms. These
most farmers went broke. Most farmers went broke.
Yes, these subsidies just prevented us all from going broke at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay. This is all of the profit that went to big business by being cheap grain.
Right.
And just think of when you think of what the multiplier effect was from all of this loss and the change in our economy and the change in our rural society, you can see that dwarfs what little bit that taxpayers paid to farmers.
1 minute, guys. Russ, 1 minute.
Yeah, and to starve the world instead of paying the world.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thanks a lot. Okay, just before I quit, I'm going to mention one organization that's helped make the choir bigger. I'm on the board of members of the Center for Food Safety. I see they have over 100 and some thousand likes on Facebook, and I think they have over 300,000 members. And the Center for Food Safety has a staff of lawyers that sues the EPA and USDA and Monsanto and all the big companies. They were successful in stopping the introduction of genetically modified sugar beets for a while, and alfalfa made I think it's USDA issue an environmental impact study of genetically modified alfalfa, and they have this vast network of people just out there like you and me that get onto their website and learn what the issues are about genetically modified food and things like that. So, okay, and they would be happy to help you all. In fact, they've signed on to the State Alliance for Responsible Agriculture now to fight CAFOs. So they would be more than happy to help you in any way they can. Thank you.
Jerson made me hold the microphone on myself. So. Everybody, so I'm Patty Rivera. I'm from Food and Water Watch in D.C. and Matt is around here somewhere in the back. He's our Food and Water Watch person in Iowa, so say hi to him too. So I think on the last hang in there, last talker, and then we're gonna talk together, which is the more important part and the more interesting part. So at Food and Water Watch, we talk a lot about corporate control. I know you guys are all familiar with that. We're all here because we're aware of just the ever-growing like consolidation, right? Those are all these big words we use: corporate control and corporate consolidation. And you know, I'm sure there's a bunch of different terms being used for it today over at the Rastsetter Summit about how efficient it is and how modern it is and how we're all stuck in the past with some romantic notion, right? Some nostalgic notion that our economy should be fair. It's very nostalgic,
That's
very,
nostalgic.
very un-American. But I think what's important, well, a different way to talk about it, right? Like it's Saturday afternoon, it's nice outside after a long winter. Nobody wants to talk about these big words in economic studies, but I think we can put it in simpler terms, and it's about who gets to decide, right? So when 4 companies slaughter all of the cattle, ranchers, you know, and farmers don't get to decide, they don't have good choices to get a fair price, they don't have a lot of leverage in that transaction, right? When Bruce Rastsetter is somehow the voice for agriculture in the presidential caucus process, we're not deciding as voters, right? So when this power gets consolidated, whether it's economic power or whether it's political power, and it's usually happening at the same time by the same players, when that power gets consolidated, we're not deciding, we're losing that choice. And so that's another way to talk about it with shorter words, right? Which I think is important on a Saturday afternoon. So, you know, there's a lot of, we've talked about all this stuff, right? So we've covered really good ground today. You guys are here because you know this stuff. But a couple things that struck me this afternoon were, you know, they're over there doing it wrong at that forum. They're having a conversation where these candidates have to come and kiss the ring. And they're kissing the ring. This is church, you can think. They're kissing the ring of a system that is broken. And it's pretty obvious to everybody except them, and I think deep down they know it too, that it's broken. And you can look at it any number of different ways and see how broken it is. You can look at our health as a nation. We are not doing well, and our food is part of that. We've talked about the environmental impact. You see right here in Iowa, and every state has some aspect of that, right? That we're just asking too much from the way that we use the environment to make food. I think another way, as we just talked about, is that they're trying to pit us against each other, and it makes them crazy when we resist that, right? It makes them crazy. There are some issues I work on just because it pisses them off. Right? So it just makes them crazy if farmers and consumers can find stuff we have in common, and usually they're what we have in common because they're the ones doing it wrong. These middlemen, these big companies, these Bruce Rastsetters of the world. There's lots of stuff we can keep doing to piss them off, which I think is the perfect value issues in camping. So the last thing I'll say that I think really indicates how broken it is the level to which they go to keep it a secret. And that's on any number of issues, right? They're negotiating trade deals that could rewrite not just our economy, but our laws, right? They're writing trade deals that would set up systems where laws that we pass get thrown out, and we don't get to read them. Our members of Congress don't get to read them, right? So that, the level, and it just keeps going. They don't want us to be able to take a picture of an agricultural facility, I won't call it a farm. They don't want us to know what we're eating, so they oppose labeling laws, whether it tells us what country the food is from, or whether there's GMOs in it, or anything else we might want to know about it. They're afraid of what they're doing coming out. And this permeates at every level of what they're doing. So I think, and the last indicator, I think, of how broken their system is, and we've already talked about this, is they know that we're catching on, that they're extracting all of the wealth, right? They're extracting the wealth from workers, from farmers, but they're also extracting wealth from our communities. So, I know Bruce Rastsetter has far too much to do with your education system here in Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
So not surprisingly, we don't get a lot of the research that actually tells that story out of land grants, like I was saying. But folks are catching on to that too. I actually brought a couple copies of a report that we did, because no land grant would do it, where we talk about what do we know about wealth when we industrialize our food system and we studied Iowa. And the short version, because it's Saturday afternoon, is that counties that have all of these hogs, right, these really concentrated hog facilities, are poorer than counties that don't. And that's because that model, you got more hogs than you've ever had. You're exporting pork. And back in the day, with these secret trade deals, hogs don't pay taxes, and neither do these companies, and they extract wealth. right? So their model is broken, and that's what we all have to do is get that word out there that they're selling something that nobody wants to buy. So in terms of our vision, we know what it is, right? It's the opposite of theirs, and there's a bunch of ways to get there. But I think the stuff that we can do is this solidarity, the stuff that we can do together. So on that note, actually I came with greetings from a bunch of folks that are gathering today in New York City, talking about similar issues, talking about the food system. There's some farmers there that have imported them to New York City. There's some urban gardeners, there's farmers in New York City, but a lot of the farmers that are gonna talk about today probably came from upstate or from other parts of the country.
No, they're right there.
But they're having a very similar conversation about these issues. And again, we have to do that together. We have to talk about how similar that conversation is about what the food system should be there and here. And they also wanted me to tell you, a lot of you folks remember this probably from 10 years ago. One of the tools that we have is to talk to people with, using educational tools and all different ways to do it. 10 years ago, there was a video that a lot of you remember called The Matrix, right, that talked about factory farms. So it's been 10 years. It's a 10-year anniversary, and at that event today in New York, they're relaunching it, the 10-year anniversary. So they wanted us to tell you that it's out. It's on thematrix.com, and it's one more thing we can do to talk to all kinds of people, young, old, cartoon lovers, action movie lovers, those of like Keanu Reeves who was in The Matrix, whatever it is, like we can use these tools to talk about what's wrong in our food system, and we can do it together, which is exactly what Bruce Rassetter doesn't want.
Okay, we've got just a little bit of time for just a few questions.
This is a question I wanted to ask really anybody who's spoke up there, is we always hear about the bees, what's going on with the bees. So does anybody have, do you know of any kind of studies or anything that is why our bees are?
Pesticide Action Network.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff out there, so, we have indicators, like if we're too stupid to realize what we're doing with a lot of industrialized agriculture, a lot of other species are showing the effects of whether it's butterflies or bees. So a lot of groups, Center for Food Safety is doing a lot of stuff on pollinators, Pesticide Action Network, we're trying to help out, and in fact, on Wednesday, I think, this week, just a couple days ago, a bunch of groups went together to the White House to deliver, I think it was 4 million petition signatures, because the White House has a task force, and they've been really, really slow, saying pick up the pace. We know the chemicals that are causing this problem, it's time to stop using those chemicals.
Bees you were gonna deliver.
I don't think anybody was really quite ready security-wise to deliver bees. They were delivering signatures.
Okay.
Patty, what you just referenced about the concentration of CAFOs, do you have that study?
There's some in the back corner, and if we run out, let me know.
Thank you.
Hey, can I talk about the bees? Okay, one of the big problems is they're coating seed and whatever with neonicotinoids. That's a systemic insecticide that goes up through the plant, and if the bee gets some of that pollen, they can die, or they get confused. And another thing is, with Roundup Ready crops, it kills virtually everything in the field except the crop, and it will kill virtually everything in the fence row. Okay, so now we kill the regular permanent stuff in the fence row, and annuals come back up. Well, the farmers don't want that, so what do? Now they drench the whole fence row in atrazine so that nothing comes out. Absolutely nothing. And so there are no more jackrabbits, you name it, animals, butterflies, bees, whatever, that used to use the plants in the fence row anymore for their refuge and for their food. So, and just another quick anecdote. Every year, every summer, every September, the monarchs come through and headed back to Mexico. And there's, the year before, I only saw one in the whole September. Well, last year, luckily, there were more, and they landed on this patch of red clover that I have now because I transitioned 19 acres to organic. And they just went there, and they were sucking up the nectar like crazy. You look around, all there is corn and soybean ground for miles and miles and miles. So they have no place to stop to get anything to eat anymore. So that's modern agriculture.
Next question.
In the Buckeye and Webster City area, they're expanding or starting commercial fisheries. whether it's a clean protein to be raised, is there any rules and regulations on commercial fisheries? Is that something that we need to get a jump on to try to regulate if it needs it? Even if it is a clean protein to raise, another building by my house is not gonna help out my property values, my roads, my communities.
Yeah, it's a good question. Everybody here is talking about doing inland fish farming, right? Because if this was a coastal community, we'd be having a very similar meeting about the state of the oceans and the state of wild fisheries and consolidation, right? So there are a lot of answers to that question. There's folks doing really interesting, closed loop, very sustainable, recirculating fish farms, and there's folks who aren't, that are doing it too big. It depends on the fish. Shockingly, fish really aren't supposed to eat corn and soybeans, despite what Cargill is telling us. They are trying to get the fish to do so, but at the same time, if you're feeding fish, other fish, you lose protein. It takes more than a pound of fish meal to make a pound of fish if you're talking about salmon. So we have to figure it out, and it should be done more carefully than it's being done.
That's sold in captivity underneath the corn and soybean gluten. They can grow fish 3 times faster than in the wild. Are we going to be eating a false fish like we do with our pork?
Well, I mean, at this point, and this is one of the many reasons, these companies don't give up information by choice. We don't have any information about our food because they want to give it to us, whether it's calories or ingredients or whatever. We have to fight for those. Country of origin labeling covers seafood, and it has to tell you whether it's farmed or wild. That's not the whole story, but it's part of the story. At least it gives you something to go on, but it's a good point. That's an industry that's kind of rising up. The organic community is having a fight about this right now. What could organic fish look like? I have a lot of opinions. Francis has heard them as a member of the Organic Standards Board. It's a hot topic, and it's not being super well regulated. Yep, right.
Food and Water Watch just did a thing about Governor Cuomo and Governor Christie. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think it's a good example of what the power of bird dogging is, that Governor Cuomo, Governor of New York, several years ago gave no signs that he had any problem with fracking. Right, New York had not yet started it. Pennsylvania, their neighbor, is covered in gas wells, and the folks in New York, were super involved in it, but we weren't the only ones. Unbelievable bird dogging for years. Everywhere that man went, every book appearance, every speech, there was somebody in his face talking about fracking, and he just banned it a few months ago. So he can't be.
He couldn't take the heat.
So there's been a bunch, and now we have to watch that. We have to protect it, but it shows that it can be done. And these politicians, and there are politicians, can be moved. He fancies himself a presidential contender, and he got tired of this. Right? This was cramping his style out on the trail, so he finally did what people were pushing him to do. So it shows what we can do.
But now they're going to cooperate on a super terminal or something?
Yeah, I mean, we're not done, right? This was a really important step, but now there's a lot of attention is now, just like you guys talking about pipelines. That is not isolated to this part of the country. That's the whole country is talking about pipelines and moving gas around. And just one little tidbit about gas, for all of this talk about how it's going to make us independent. You don't build export terminals for energy independence, right? So in Maryland, we're having a fight about an export terminal all down the East Coast. So they're going to drill this gas, they're going to put it in a pipeline, and they're going to put it on boats and send it to a higher payer. In fact, somebody's going to pay more. That's not energy independence, because it's not worth ruining our water for. So if they're still in the mix, we still have to watch them. But 2 years ago, he wanted to drill New York, and now he says he won't do that. Yeah. So it's a start.
Okay. Thank you.
Another question?
Yeah. I don't think I need the mic.
I'm Jersey.
I just want to tell you, I'm very appreciative of being here. Thank you for everything you've done for us for New Jersey. I've learned so much about Iowa, and I see that Iowa and New Jersey are really kind of sister states with some of the high government systemic powers that we don't like. And I got to get a flight. So for all of you that I've met and talked to, your words and everything you do is phenomenal. And for those of you I didn't get a chance to talk to, I look forward to seeing you sometime in the future.
I want to just kind of start closing this out. I want you to There's an article by Alejandra, and so our data's kind of been documented there. And I want you to go to the last pages, because we need to talk about next steps. There are going to be activities and meetings and coalitions and people meeting across the state of Iowa. So please look at that list of options for you, particularly in the next month or so, because, it ain't over. And we gotta hang in there, and we gotta fight hard, and we gotta stay together. I want to just take a minute again to thank the Iowa CCI staff. They had to pull this together quickly. We had to respond to last Saturday date. What did they ever do it? They didn't hard. They worked hard, they put in a lot of time, extra time and effort. So thank you again, Iowa CCI staff. You guys are absolute pros, and I think we all in the room absolutely love working with Iowa CCI. I'm going to just kind of close things up with just a couple brief thoughts. Number one, let's remember that Iowa is ground zero for a revolution in agriculture. And after today, we must continue this epic journey to change the course of agriculture to a sustainable approach that restores our water, air, soil, and food to health and prosperity for all of mankind, not just the 1%. And for all of mankind around the globe, every color, every race, every continent. In order to do that, we must bring more people into this movement, folks. And it begins, remember, where you are. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your associations, talk to your clubs, talk to your county leaders, talk to your local city councils. Get on boards, get on commissions. We need to be represented. So let's start the movement inside the system too. Also, we need to remember that everyday people want justice, and when we lift up these issues, they get it. So, get out there. And why? Because of what happened today. Today, we have shown the press and the rest of the country that we will be resolute in our belief, we will stand firm on our goal, we will not back down to pressure, we will not stoop to the level of Rick Perry, Chris Christie, Mike Huckabee, Scott Walker, Jeb Bush, or Ted Cruz, who come to Iowa as beggars, kneeling at the throne of Kingmaker Bruce Raffstatter with their hands out. Because, repeat after me, I believe that. I believe that we will win. 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 All right, let's get out there and let's do it.
Any plan for the buses to go back to go back to?
Oh, yeah. That is going to do it for today's streaming. And again, I want to thank you for sticking with me the whole day.
This requires some time to study on
Yeah,
this.
that's not, yeah, I'd have to look it up.
And
And then I'd have to have somebody
before
explain it.
I close it out,
Yeah, I'm
please
not
check out
sure
my
without
donation
someone helping to explain it, I can understand it.
below this video view window on the Ustream channel. If you're watching on live stream or in any of the streaming channels, whether it be Global Life News Network, Activist World, and Nelson, or any of the others, please go to www.ustream. Please go to
Real quick, there's one event that I wanted to draw close attention to for folks in Polk County, Des Moines area. Bill Stowe, who was at our office last night, mentioned this. On Tuesday, the Des Moines Waterworks Board is going to vote to move forward with a lawsuit lawsuit against 3 counties who manage drainage districts that are polluting our water, okay? Because of
I hope this-
corporate, because of factory farms. So we want to be there. Bill Stone needs us there, okay? And the media's going to be there too. So we're asking folks to either meet at the CCI office at 2 or down at the Des Moines Water Works office at 3 o'clock, okay? So, quick show of hands on Tuesday, the 10th. 2 o'clock at the CCI office or 3 o'clock at Des Moines Water Works.
Please go to www.gofundme.com/OccupyCaitlin. Again, that's KAYLYNN. Again, www.gofundme.com/OccupyCaitlin. Or go to www.paypal.com. And in the send money to line, enter the email address STRAINSOP@AOL.com. Again, www.paypal.com. And in the send money to line, enter the email address STRAINSOP@AOL.com. That will help me cover the cost of my live streaming broadcasting. I do this solely on my own dime. I don't get any support from any organizations, not even nonprofits. I work solely for the viewers, and all I'm asking is for a little help in the cover the costs so that I can continue to bring you these events live and unedited. And you support your local streamers wherever they may be. If you cannot donate to me directly, then please pass my links around, pass my channel around, and let others know that I am covering things here in Des Moines. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the stream.